First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you to this special presentation, we call it that, on Open and Affirming Sunday. It is the theme for today's worship celebration, as well as related to our presenter and today's topic. I have the privilege and honor of introducing Shea, Hultquist. They are a member of our Key Flag Board of Directors, which is the local chapter of the national organization, the oldest national organization that has advocated for LGBTQ people, primarily through supporting their allies, friends, allies, parents, and families dating back to the 70s. So it's quite a long history. It's over 50 years now. Just a sidebar, that organization was, if you doubt the effect or impact that one person can have, the genesis of PFLAG was a Jewish mother who was dissatisfied that her gay adult son had been harassed by the police. And so she chose to march in one of the very earliest Christopher Street parades in New York City. And she carried a sign that said, "I'm a parent of a gay son and I support him," kind of a thing. And the response from the people who saw her in that parade was so overwhelming that she was driven to try and improve parents' understanding and acceptance of their LGBTQ children. And from there, the organization has grown to hundreds of chapters and probably several 100,000 members. So with that said, Shea is a therapist and a wonderful diagnostician, I would say. They recently presented at one of our support meetings and led parents through a process of reflection about what were your feelings when your child first came out to you. You can put yourself back in that time and context, and led us through a whole reflection about the attitudes toward our community and acceptance, and it was a wonderful experience to participate in. So with that, I think this is going to be an interactive session, and I'll turn it over to Shea.
Thank you. What an amazing day to be with you. What a special honor it is to be here with you, this community, on an amazing, auspicious day, where you all have earned and received the acknowledgement that you are an open and affirming church for LGBTQ people. Thank you so much for choosing to do that and for including me in this day. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Mary, to let me be part of this. I want to start with a story. It is true that I'm going to ask for some interaction, because that is my way. But I'm going to start with a story. Let's imagine together a woman who is, I'm almost 50, let's say she's 50, 60, and she is on her way to the opening of a big medical center in the community. It's been talked about for years, everyone's really excited about it. She can't wait to go in and meet the new doctors, the new staff, see what services there are. It's winter, and the stairs and the walkway up to the main doors are icy. And the railing of the center is unfixed. And as she walks up the stairs, it's icy, she slips, she grabs the railing, it impales her. She goes into the hospital seeking treatment. They come out, they fix the railing, and they say, "Look, everything is fine. There's no danger here." "Well, I'm bleeding, I'm injured, I need an x-ray." "Well, we already, it's welcoming now. It's welcoming now. It's not dangerous to walk in here anymore." We all know that this woman needs action, not just a welcome. She needs treatment for the damage that was inflicted on her. She needs healing. And that is what it means to choose to be an open and affirming church to queer people. You are acknowledging that our society, and in fact, our churches, have wounded queer people. You're acknowledging that there's a wound that exists. And it's not enough to decide to be welcoming. It is our duty as Christians to see the wound and treat the wound. And that's what you guys are choosing to do. It's not just an attitude, it's an action. When I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in San Francisco, there was a local priest named Father Bill Vargas. He was an out gay priest in the Episcopal Church. And Father Vargas was a caring man, and he also walked into communities like Jesus walking into the temple with a whip. He had a whip of a tongue about chastising the religious communities in San Francisco to take action for the AIDS crisis. And he castigated leaders who weren't stepping up in the religious community. And in fact, he said, forget the leaders. The communities are going to rise up. The congregations are going to rise up. And they did. He founded the Episcopal Sanctuary, which is a homeless shelter, including a treatment center for men who are dying of AIDS. And it still remains the only shelter in San Francisco that lets people bring their pets. Because he could see that not allowing pets into a shelter was an obstacle for the unhoused getting care. This is the kind of person he was. He could see what was the obstacle to people getting treated, getting loved. Let's tear it down. Whatever it is, let's tear it down. He was a peer of Harvey Milk. In fact, he preached at Harvey Milk's funeral. He was the priest of the church I grew up in. So my religious formation came from somebody like Father Bill Vargas. I never knew that there was a divide between the church and LGBTQ people. It seemed like the most natural way to act out our faith would be to be accepting and encouraging and healing and rescuing and collaborating with marginalized folks. It wasn't until I got older that I realized that the church, the wider church, had been wounding my LGBTQ brethren. So this is the wound that I'm talking about that's happened out in the world and in other churches, that we have an opportunity to heal. We have an opportunity and an obligation to follow our values and decide that we are going to be doing something different than that wounding. We're going to be doing something different than the injuries that have happened. We're going to be people like Father Vargas who choose to take action. And so I wanted to ask you all a little bit about where this decision came from. I know that you all have hosted PFLAG meetings here. I know Frank. But I'm wondering what kinds of things would earn a congregation this designation of being open and affirming. Do you all have things that you believe that's happening here that we can catch you doing? What are some of the things that make this church open and affirming? Yes, ma'am.
It was a hard battle. It took many years, and it took many voices to say that as much as we always thought that we were open and affirming, without the designation, we're not really open and affirming. And it was a very passionate ending vote in the sense that there were some very strong naysayers, even as we took the vote. I've been here 51 years and waiting for something like that to happen. And I felt as if I was almost ready to leave the church if it didn't that day.
That's how important this messaging is to you. it's so important to you that as a community, you all can agree that we're affirming to LGBTQ people. It was so important to affirm that to you, that it was almost a deal breaker. What a relief you must have felt that your community chose to make that statement. What else has come up for you folks about what are ways to be open and affirming, or what your feelings are about that?
I think many of us who have been here have children who come out. And so in support of family, we realize that we want our children to feel like there's a safe place for them to come. So it's really important to us, or anyone else for that matter. But I think it makes it more apparent when it's part of who you are as a family or your environment. And part of it too is the craziness of the world right now. We want to be anti that. We want to be welcoming to anybody. Make anybody feel safe because it's so nuts out there.
Thank you. Anybody who has been a parent of a teenager in church knows how hard it is to convince your teenagers to come to church. I can relate to this, having been a teenager in my own young adult children. And so parents of queer teenagers must be like, holy moly, you guys, don't make it harder for me. Could we please make sure that our community at least acknowledges the identity, the humanity of my child? Let's not let that be a stumbling block. I think that's a really important point, that we're trying to eliminate stumbling blocks for people meeting God. And if within our own community, you're pointing out, we have children and adults that are LGBT, if we're not designating ourselves as affirming their identities and their humanity, they have a stumbling block to finding God here. Instead of meeting Jesus, they're meeting the Pharisees. Did anything else come to anyone's mind about other ways that you all are affirming LGBT folks? Or maybe something was said that you want to add?
Well, it's kind of interesting. It's perhaps a little bit indicative of the welcoming environment here that someone who is a member of our community joined the church and didn't understand why this was coming to a vote, because they thought the church already was. And which is a little bit of the experience of my husband and I, reading the website at the time, the church was inclusive. Well, we didn't really understand that it was more spiritually inclusive, diversity of religious belief and thought, as opposed to how an LGBTQ person might interpret that word. But it was this was very recent, so the question to me was, well, why does this need to be a vote, and what will happen because of it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was indicative, or at least suggests that they did not experience any prejudice or anything to turn them away when they started attending our church and were welcomed like everyone else.
Right, their hospital steps were not icy here, and the railing was fixed. And that is really important. And in addition, you are choosing to do some treatment of folks who might be turned away other places or who've been wounded. So it is actually a huge step that this person and that you two felt welcome and included here, justified the vibes and by the way people treated you when you introduced your husband. They don't flinch or have a negative reaction, not much. But the choice to make the vote is to go beyond, okay, we fixed the banister and it's not an icy approach. It goes beyond that. It's a decision to have other safety, emotional safety, and also actions. So some of the actions that I can think of when I'm thinking of going to a church, so I'm non-binary. so I'm part of the trans community, and I'm queer. Hi, come on in. And I go to church. I've been to a lot of churches, but if a friend invites me to come to church, I for sure am going to go to the website first. Because I learned that not everybody's church experience was like mine with Father Hultquist. And so there's a couple things that I look for. I'm looking for a statement of inclusivity, which I did see on your website this morning. This is not a requirement. I'll just say it was a signal to me of safety when I went to your staff. All of your staff at your church have their pronouns listed. I don't necessarily think that's a requirement of every organization, to every single person, every single name tag to always put their pronouns. Maybe this is something that's going to be big now and it might fade in the next few years as being important. But to me, as someone with they, them pronouns, part of the trans community, when I saw that, I thought, okay, so this church understands that you can't really assume someone's pronouns. They're indicating theirs because they know that they know that trans people exist. There's sort of like a bare minimum of communication there that's being met for me. Frank pointed out that there are gender neutral bathrooms here down at this part of the campus. It's another big one for me. I don't have to decide what bathroom I have to go into. I can just go to a gender neutral one. Those are all things that could be a stumbling block for an LGBT person who's thinking of coming here. Again, we're wanting to be the innkeeper in the Good Samaritan story, not the Pharisees. We're wanting to be the kind of hospitality that, despite the person's otherness, despite how the person may not be like us, that they're not going to be stumbling on their way to God here. They're going to have a way to meet God here, even in our actions. Did anything else come up for you folks when we're talking about being open and affirming here? Okay.
Well, I think we had a welcome statement we voted on long ago, 2016-ish timeframe, that indicated, a welcome. Same one you read today, I haven't changed it. And then, but did we, it was sort of are we really, we had a statement on doing it. And then I think in the last few years, we started becoming more active. We put the pride doors up front. We got some good reaction from that. And a lot of us were like, why aren't we ONA? Our welcome statement says we're taking action to demonstrate. We got involved in the community when we had some damage to those doors and kind of got a broader sense of the community around the support. And it was just like, this is just silly. Why aren't we ONA? And I think that was kind of for me like we say we are, then let's make a bolder statement.
Let's be it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love this addition. This is reminding me of being in college and realizing you have enough credits to get a double major. Let's get it. Let's get the double major. We're already doing the work. We're doing the work. Let's get the credit. Let's get the credit so we can show that we have done the work, so that we're not leaving people questioning our prayers. So I'm learning about you guys today. I'm learning that this designation is a symbol of inclusivity that is actually critical for people here to stay. I'm learning that it is a way to affirm our own children. It's not really about others out there being welcome, but even amongst our own also being welcome, our own children knowing that they can find a place here. I'm learning that you are doing the work, that this designation is a way to acknowledge it and signal it, not in a performative way, but in a demonstrating, a welcome way. It seems like it's a right fit at the right time. And maybe some of you have been waiting a long time for this. Maybe part of it is the fullness of time that you mentioned about what's happening in the world. That sometimes the situation of the world is what sharpens us to act. I'm thinking again about Bill Vargas in the 80s coming out as a gay man in the early 80s, it was the sharpness of the world that led him to do that, the AIDS crisis. So sometimes it is a crisis around us that encourages it. But you all have chosen to not put up stumbling blocks. Your banisters and your icy walkways are no longer poking, and they're not icy. But in addition, you are choosing to let people know that they are going to be welcome here. And you're welcoming those queer people in your community, allowing them to have leadership positions, allowing them to celebrate their anniversaries. You're honoring people's pronouns. So there's all these ways that we could catch you in the action of being an open and affirming community. So we'll go beyond, well, we all feel open and affirming. We can catch you in the action of having a gender neutral bathroom. We can catch you in the action of communicating pronouns or asking me my pronouns. And so catching you in the action of being open and affirming is a way for us to actually do the treatment, to treat a wound that's been wedged between queer community and the Christian community. This wound wasn't caused by this congregation, and it wasn't even, I don't think, caused by the Congregationalist Church. I don't know the whole history of the Congregationalist Church, but this wound was caused by the greater church. And so we as Christians get to decide that we are going to not re-injure here marginalized folks. And of course, it goes beyond the LGBTQ folks. We were talking about this morning. We wouldn't want our community to have stumbling blocks to any group finding God here. We want them to encounter the hospitality of the innkeeper in the Good Samaritan story, whether it's based on disability or ethnic background or your previous church experience, your politics.
Immigrant status.
Your documentation status, exactly. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to kind of, let me kind of shift gears a little bit. So we talked a bit about how there could be a wound with queer people in the church and how you guys are choosing to treat that wound by being open and affirming. This is kind of an uncomfortable topic, but I'm curious to hear us reflect on what early messaging we received in our culture about LGBTQ folks. The reason why I'm wanting us to reflect on this messaging is I want to understand what soup we have been cooking in, what marinade we've been seasoned in, because it helps explain why the treatment is so necessary. Okay, so I'm looking around. We're all from different generations, probably. You already know when I grew up. I was born in the 70s in San Francisco, so I came of age. I'm a younger Gen X person, and I came of age in San Francisco, so I had a lot of very positive messages about gay people, very mixed messages around trans people. I'm wondering what messages you guys all had. Can you think back to your childhood? Do you remember early on hearing your parents talk about queer people, or any of the media talking about queer people?
So I was born in 47, and I remember very well junior high school. The appropriate response was to a pass by someone of the same sex was to punch them out. And I think that this kind of sanctioned violence really oppresses the whole society. If everyone is at risk, if non-state violence is, and then of course state violence was practiced as well. So I think as we move along in history, it's better for everyone if we all can accept each other. It's a lot less scary.
Thank you. Okay, so that is a familiar story. If someone of your gender asks you out or makes their hits on you, the response is to punish them. So that message might be, gayness is met with violence here. It's so intolerable that it's met with violence. Would you believe I work with LGBTQ folks as a therapist, and I know folks my age who remain single and refuse to date because they grew up in that era. And so as much as times have changed in Southern California, that message was so strong. Literally, the anecdote that they told me was, well, I did this, eye connection with eyes across the restaurant, and it was lunchtime, and I was at work, and maybe he was at work, and I don't know if I was to say anything, and I thought, gosh, if I hit on him or give him the number, I might get taken out back and punched.
I grew up much earlier, and I was in college, and all of a sudden, our dean of students disappeared. He was found in a restroom with another, person, and just whipped away. And I was a little puzzled by that, but, it was. I graduated and went to my first job in New York teaching on Fire Island. And on Long Island, where the boat went over the fire island. And all of a sudden, I was surrounded by people that I acknowledged were LGBT. And it was like, they're real people. And
They're not just a disgrace in the bathroom to be fired. They're actually humans.
They're humans, and we could go to the beach together, and we could, hang out and go down to, New York, and so this was like, oh my goodness, I grew up in this funny area with so shame, and then there's real people around.
So I like the addition of the before and after you met actually gay people, that the messaging was to be gay is to be a disgrace, a hushed firing. But also you received messages that gay people are regular, fun, smart when you met them. So once you got a chance to be around them, you had a different story.
I grew up I was born in 57, so, and I was a Catholic then. So in my culture, it was whispered about, and it was shameful. And I got that message a long time. Not that I did finally have a gay friend when I worked, and it was like, I asked her, and she said yes, or she said no, and just to kind of add on to what she said, like, okay, this is who everyone is. It's not like just because you choose somebody sexually different than I would, doesn't make you bad. No,
I really love the reenactment of the
telling you,
Yeah.
it was so horrible, really horrible.
Right, there's an implicit message, I'm sure there was explicit messaging too, but the implicit message with the whispering is this is not something to be proud of, it's something to shut down, in fact, if possible. Here's the recording.
I don't know if I need a mic.
We'll get to you too.
Yeah, you do, good sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Born in 1960, my parents were really into theater, and I was into theater and dance, so there were always gay people around me, like always. Lots of friends, people I worked with, people in dance, people in theater. I'm new to this church. I just came in April, and I would not have come had I not seen the open and affirming messaging on the website. I definitely would not have come. So that was really important to me, and I think I think it's also important in terms of growing a church with younger people, because their sensibilities are very different, particularly in Southern California. I think it's really important for getting younger people here. I'm not that young, but anyway. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, what an important witness that was, we have someone in the corner who's pretty close to you. What an important witness that was so critical that you wouldn't be here otherwise. Okay, and then next we'll get to you, yeah.
Who are you pointing at?
You now, and then we'll get to you in the back.
I was born before most of you were, 1938. So I went to high school in the early 1950s. And as I recall in my high school, no one even thought about voting again in the high school I went to. But it was not for any kind of reason. It was just like you remain hidden if you were. But I was in a social club where we had a young man there who was gay. But he was part of this all boys social club. We had parties and we would date. In the same social club, I had two other friends who would go out to Hollywood Boulevard and pick up gays, and they call them rolling gays. So they drive along and they get a gay in the car, they drive around the corner and beat them up and take them up.
I was imagining this as a dating thing, no.
No, it was a capitalist kind of thing. Everybody anyway you want to go. And one of them went to jail, or my point is, I guess, is that I grew up in an era, I think, was a lot of it, where there was clearly an anti-gay movement that was not really out in the open, so to speak. People were, oh, they're just different. I want to stay with them because they might try to do something.
Okay, I appreciate that, this idea that gay people might be predators was the message. They might try to do something to me. When in fact the story is that it's the straight people who are being the predators. That message that you might be hurt by a gay person or harmed, or I'm also hearing like a lot of reiteration of it being like secrecy, which is, it just has such a shaming message. Yes, I'm ready to hear.
Well, I don't think I even knew that there was such a thing until I was almost 21. I was born in 1948. And, but when I started teaching, I was getting a spelling test as a substitute teacher, and the word gay was in the, I think it was second or third grade. I think it must have been second. Spelling test. And I got all these snickers. At least by then I kind of knew why they were snickering, but it absolutely flabbergasted me that a second grader would have any knowledge of such a thing. It took me 21 years or something to even know that there was something. And then we had my dad had a cousin who I never, it was called a bachelor as far as I was concerned. I didn't know that there was, anything different about being a bachelor. And he ended up dying of AIDS, and that's when I, in all my great wisdom, that's when I realized that he was gay. He was actually my son's godfather. And so I was very slow to the recognition that, wow, there's a difference in the world and that people practice sex differently.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that too, that for some of us we got no messaging because it wasn't talked about, and it wasn't even necessarily a shameful whisper network thing, but you just really didn't know. You sounded very innocent to be things beyond your awareness. So part of it is sort of an absence of messaging. So that's a stew that we grew up in, a little bit different for each of us depending on location and where we were. Like I said, I grew up in San Francisco, and we had gay teachers at my school, and they were very well respected, but none of them had children. None of them were married with children. That's changed now. Now, queer couples can do and have children in all sorts of ways. But I remember thinking, well, this isn't for me, because if I'm gay, then I will have to be like all of these adults that were respected in my community, but didn't have families. So that wouldn't be. It's not even just the biological difficulty. It was sort of considered something that gay people weren't interested in. The message that I got was gay people don't want to be parents, nor would they be good parents. Which none of these messages we were sharing this morning were actually accurate, but they were very strongly given to us, and they shaped us in a way. And so it's painful to remember them a bit, and I'm not the only queer person in this room. I know it's kind of painful to go back through that. But it's important to remember that is a stew that not only are straight and cisgender people growing up in, but LGBTQ folks are growing up with that same hushed disappearing of people being punched, being bullied, having to hide who they are, maybe being single forever like your bachelor uncle because he couldn't find others like him safely or didn't want the family to know. That the queer community is growing up with those messages too. So when we talk about being open and affirming, we're talking about that word as well, that we're deciding to communicate. You've heard a lot of, excuse my language, shit. You've heard and been told a lot of BS, and you're not going to hear that here. You're not going to hear that here. I will say, I was at a reconciliation Sunday just last week at a different church. I wasn't speaking, I was there with my family. And the pastor there, it was a Methodist church, and the pastor there is openly gay and has a husband and they have children. There are a lot of gay people at the church, although it's not, it's a very it's not a gay church, so to speak. I don't know what that would be. But at the end of the service, I was mingling, and a gentleman there and I were talking, and he said, I've seen you here a couple times, let's introduce each other. And he said, all of it, I don't even know what all this talk is for. Why are we talking about this so much? And I thought, oh my gosh, were we not just in the same service? I don't think that this man had reflected as deeply as you all have about the messages that the church has given LGBT people and the signs of exclusion that LGBT people are looking for. We're scoping and scanning for whether we're going to be included or not. So his question, I think, was actually well-intentioned. I think he was, I really don't know why we're talking about this. I think he meant, because I love everybody, and everybody's welcome, why are we talking about it? I think it was very well-intentioned, but as a non-binary queer person, hearing that, I don't go there regularly, I was there kind of visiting. I thought, oh, okay, so is this the kind of church where I might receive questions if I explain my pronouns? Am I gonna, if I ask about, their ministries, or if I ask about even the bathrooms, or if I bring my partner, when I get a partner, still working on that. When I bring my hypothetical really amazing partner, is she going to be asked these questions? It did give me sort of, even a well-intentioned question, I think a fairly innocent question. It showed there's some work to do culturally, and so I share that anecdote. Thank you, Doris.
One would apologize that a few of us will need to dismiss ourselves to go warm up with the choir. But I wanted to take the opportunity too to draw our attention, since we're on this kind of topic of messaging, how, even before this current administration, transgender people have been the minority of a minority, and presently have become like the boogeyman. And the messaging right now is transgender people are simply not human. They don't exist, or they're not real, or they are the cause of the fall of Western civilization. I don't know. It's just very...
Would that I could be that powerful.
Yeah.
Should I be the cause of all of capitalism?
To me, it's very, pernicious, definitely dehumanizing. And in fact, even before the current administration, Black transgender women were being killed, murdered in disproportionate numbers, and their murders frequently not solved, simply because they were considered throwaway. I mean, why would someone care to solve the murder of this marginalized person? As if just their mere living was somehow unjustified or unworthy, which is contrary to what our values are. That every human life, has merit, has value, is worthy. So, this negative messaging still exists, and in fact is being exploited or asserted as if it should be accepted as the norm, which I reject.
Thank you. That is, do you have your hand up? Oh, you do, okay, well, Willis, can we start in the back and then we'll come to you? And I do want to ask you about your knitting also, because I'm a knitter. Yeah, we have that, we share that identity.
I'm still in awe in different ways, like the Catholic Church. The priest can't marry, don't marry, and yet they condemn this kind of, you have six people on the Supreme Court who are all Catholics, and they worship them that their ministers are gay, or most of them you don't know really, but there's so many different categories. It's just hard to even fathom why all these different kinds of things. I've seen so many different ways of being prejudiced against, or I've seen the black and white movement with my father being able to go over white for years until someone found out that he was married to a black woman, and I'm not sure whether he was all white or whether he wasn't. But it's just so mixed up in every different way. I don't know how to go.
What wisdom there about how our struggle for equality is not limited to being gay or being trans.
That's right.
We're actually connected. It's a long combined effort for us to decrease prejudice.
Yeah. And I don't know how long. I don't think it'll ever be, done. So,
Thank you. And now to our knitter.
I had the most sheltered childhood, clearly. I grew up in a very, very small town. And literally the only, even faint reference to being gay that I can remember from when I was a kid is at school we were told, don't wear green on Thursday because it means you're a homo. I don't know how many other people have heard
I've
this.
been missing out on that. That's why I don't have a partner yet. I'm not wearing green on the right day. Although my kids are like, Mom, you look very gay. And I was concerned. Sorry.
Well, the thing is, I certainly didn't know what being a homo meant. It was just clearly bad. And I bring this up because that's a very early association that I had with this word that I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was something nobody would want to be, because nobody in my school wore green on Thursday. Did anybody else know this?
Did you?
In the 60s.
You heard that?
Okay, so this was in the 50s, so,
Were you here in Southern California?
I was in upstate New York,
Where were you?
New Paltz.
Okay.
That was Southern California too.
Was it?
No, I mean, I've met lots of people who knew this. I mean, it's fact, we knew it. Anyway, I'm gonna jump ahead. many years, I didn't really meet any gay people that I knew were gay until I was out of graduate school and I started teaching at UCLA, and my department was full of gay men. Really, the majority of men teaching in linguistics in the 70s and 80s were gay. There were some non-gay people, and that was how I learned that, and we had a lot of gay graduate students, both male and female, but mostly male. And that was how I learned that gay people were just like anybody else. What I'm going to talk about is, a long time ago, I started teaching undergraduate courses about UCLA slang, the slang that UCLA students use. And I have taught many of these courses, and I've also given lectures about this at universities all over the country. And if you have enough time to work with students and get them to think about what words mean and how they may affect other people, you can bring out from the frattiest frat boy the idea that fag is really a bad word. But when you start talking to them, they say, of course it's not a bad word, I call all my friends fag. And you say, yeah, but what does it mean? Why are you calling them that? And they talk about that, and then they think about, you can lead them to think about the fact that sometimes they use this word to somebody who is gay, and the effect that it can have on that person, which is really dramatic. And so, even much more recently, in universities all across the country, that is the most common slur that guys call, in a very friendly way, they call their friends, but they also use it as a really, really, really hateful word. And we spend a lot of time in slang class talking about the power of words and what is offensive language. You look in dictionaries, people say that the offensive words are either blasphemous or scatological. But those words don't really bother people these days, young people, or even, I would say, probably most people in this room. I mean, I don't use words like that except when I'm being a professor of slang. But the words that people use to label other people are the really hurtful words, the really offensive words. And there are some other words that are really bad, but fag is really one of the worst ones that when you talk to people, initially they never realize this, but when they think about it, they do. So, it's just that, part of the whole cultural thing we've been talking about has to do with language.
Absolutely. That's such important wisdom that these messages can be shifted with some thoughtful conversation and some gifted professors.
I'll give you one other example. I mean, the word Jew used to mean engaging in heavy bargaining to get a lower price, which, I don't think probably most people in this room would use that word, but in this first class where I really learned most of what I learned about student attitudes, there was a girl who was Jewish, and she said, my father uses this word all the time, and it's just fine. And she thought about it a little bit more for several weeks, and then she said, I'm going to talk to my father about that word.
Right, Jew as a verb?
Yeah.
Like you're going to Jew someone down.
Well, in my high school, you didn't wear white tennis shoes on Wednesday or Thursday.
Another thing I should start doing. Okay. Writing it down. We have two. This gentleman and not to assume you're a gentleman.
This is going to be kind of ironic since I grew up in Palm Springs, and you think it would be a bit different than my experience growing up. But the homophobia of straight people was a very difficult thing to deal with in being a high school student in Palm Springs. There was an amazing amount of insulting, bullying, taunting of other straight kids. And queer was just a terrible insult. Somebody called you that, you pretty much had to punch that guy, because you were not going to take that insult.
These words are violent, actually.
Yeah, and unfortunately, my last name being Greer, I caught that insult a few times. So, interestingly, there were a number of the gay men and women in my high school class. I did not feel at the time that they were singled out for that kind of bullying and taunting. That meant more towards this very homophobic interactions between straight kids. So it was an atmosphere that was very unpleasant. I don't know really how the gay people that I knew were actually treated. They were definitely not in the in crowd. But, I moved through drama class and some other things, and nice kids, I liked them. but that was just a terrible experience, and I think that formed a lot of our initial impressions about this whole issue. And it takes time to get that out of your mind. And I think we were kind of ambivalent overall. There was this one area where that came up, and then there was sort of real life. But it was an interesting time. And one of the things that I've really been amazed with is how little of that my two sons had encountered. It just wasn't happening when they were going through elementary school all the way through high school. So tremendous change in those attitudes. Although I do think in the present climate, that's coming back. Because I really sense that from some of these more right-wing, hyper-masculine people. So.
Yeah, thank you. What an important addition to this conversation that some of this bullying and messaging happens not to LGBT folks, but to other straight people, to police behavior, and to make sure that there's a second-class citizen. You want to make sure you're up in this class, right? So make sure you don't do anything that would get you called queer or gay. Did you want to add?
Just adding on to Pam's comments about sort of bad words and things getting into the whole culture. I used to have very kind of interesting comments with my dad, who used the N-word all the time. And when he was saying it, he was generally talking in a degrading manner about his own race. And the idea that my child's generation sort of came back and sort of said, we're going to take the word back, is what they said to me. And so then it became kind of the word to say, which still makes me quite uncomfortable, along with all the other four-letter words or whatever it is. So Pam and I have had conversations about having triggering word discussion group, and I think it would be a good topic to still continue, because there still are a lot of words that trigger emotions among probably everybody, and it would be interesting to learn. I learned sometime last week, maybe it was even here, about room temperature water being an issue. It was here, being an issue and kind of a trigger. And so there are a lot of things that we have to learn about language and how it affects people, and these are good discussions.
I don't know that one. Room temperature water? Okay.
Chinese.
The Chinese culture, I gather, I don't know, Hilda may know more about this than I do. What is it, to drink cold water? Anyway, I have what I consider a Chinese sister. She can explain it better, but anyway, we were thinking about putting a refrigerator here at the campus to chill water for homeless people, and someone pointed out that everybody really doesn't appreciate getting cold water.
Like a cultural difference. Okay. Thank you for teaching me that. I didn't know how to. Yes,
I would say, I have a problem with the word queer. I just don't like calling people that. And I know that it has been adopted. I know they're trying to turn it around to make it a positive, but I still, I don't feel comfortable with that.
I appreciate you saying that. This is great. Let's talk about that. So I think these slurs have been so violently delivered to folks, both straight people and gay people and Black people with the N-word, and they've been so violent that those of us with compassion, have stopped saying them. And so we listen to the communities of folks who are hurt by them the most, and we try to follow their lead. So I can think of a lot of slurs around LGBTQ folks that I wouldn't say out loud myself, except in the context of talking about them. Like my kids call they call it the F slur. They don't say fag out loud, just like you said, the N-word. They say F slur, and they also sometimes the T slur. I was like, what's that one? Can you spell it out for me in code? It's tranny. Tranny being a derogatory term for a trans person. But I have heard trans people very, more like flamboyantly trans people say, oh, who is it? Was it Sam Smith, who is a trans artist? And they said, I'm a tranny with a Grammy after they won their Grammy in a very playful way. So it's uncomfortable a little bit to watch some communities reclaim words that have been used so harmfully. I understand why a trans person might want to reclaim a harsh word. I understand why gay men might reclaim the F slur. I can understand why a Black person might reclaim the N-word. I can understand it, that as a white person, I'm so sensitive about the misuse of it that I would use it. So same with the F slur and the T slur, which we now know is tranny, didn't know that before. We're not going to use them unless we're part of that community. It's those are sort of like a category of so weaponized that unless you're in that community and you're using it very playfully, we're not going to use it. So queer is a different category than that, right? Because it's not just used playfully amongst gay people, it's used to describe a whole community. So I think that your apprehension is really admirable because it comes from a sense of compassion and not wanting to step into a hurtful place. And in fact, like you shared about these words were even harmful to other straight people. So you're not wanting to use it. I don't know how queer got itself out of the category that you can only use it if you're in this community and you're telling a joke, and is now part of the cultural vocabulary. I don't know how that Miss Professor of Slang, maybe you know more about it than I do. Okay. But I do know that it has gotten out of this category into a category over here. And how you use it probably, the context of using it probably matters. So generally, I think these days it's comfortable to say the queer community, even if you're straight, I think it's comfortable to use that. I can't tell you you're comfortable, but I'm comfortable as an LGBT person that people say the queer community as an umbrella term for anything LGBTQ. But, and I might say to a friend, well, she's really cute, is she queer? Like I might say to another gay person that. But if I were straight, I probably wouldn't say, oh, she's queer. I probably wouldn't use it as it's one of those words that the context kind of matters. If you're straight, it's probably good that you're feeling more apprehensive about it. And outside of the phrase the queer community, or we want to be welcoming to queer people, outside of this sort of umbrella phrase, it probably is good that you're being careful to not deploy it, because you don't know that it might harm someone's feelings. And I do think this is also generational, as several of us have talked about the change of this, your son's experiencing something different. You sharing that your kids see the N-word differently than you did. This does change over time. So I think we're not there won't be an end point for this. I think we're going to keep evolving But currently that's sort of how it's used. Like I told you, I'm a young Gen Xer. Most queer people older than me don't like the use of the word queer. Most gay people older than me, it was used so violently against them that they're like, I don't care if you reclaim it for you, but I don't like it. And most people I don't know why I'm sort of the young Gen Xers are kind of the cutoff there. Most people younger than me and me have reclaimed it. So I think it speaks to your compassion that you're careful around these words.
In my age, I guess.
Did I say that? So Miriam, guys, is older than a young Gen Xer, is what we've decided. Okay, well, it is time to wrap up. If you were in choir, by the way, you're missing the warm up. Nobody knows.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
How to be a good ally versus a performative ally? On social media, you see a lot of performative allyship. It just looks, I don't know, disingenuous possibly. So how to be a true ally in ways that you think would be meaningful?
I love that question. So, an ally to those in your world would be to think about what their needs might be. So, if you had a trans friend that you were inviting to church, you might tell them, and by the way, I already checked, there is a gender neutral bathroom at this church, so I can show you where it is when you come in. So being aware of the folks that you might be around and communicating to them the tolerance of this community or the availability of resources. If you're not speaking about a specific person that you're wanting to get allied to, or you're talking more broadly about the community, I do think it's things like designating your community open and affirming, deciding to take a stance, and it's reminding me of Father Bobarkis, being willing to say from the pulpit what is Christian values and what is not. Being willing to designate your community as welcoming is a way to signal not performatively, but in a really practical way to the LGBTQ folks around here. I also just wanted to repeat from the beginning that you all have been an incredible supporter of the PFLAG, as Frank pointed out. You hosted our chapter here for many years. You promoted our meetings in your social media and in your church leaflets, and that was a way of, without it being about a specific person, you were able to make a change actually that was practical, like a felt change in the lives of LGBTQ folks in this area. I don't know if you guys know this, but the research shows that LGBTQ teens and young adults have, many are thriving, but they have, the data show they have higher rates of all of the problems than any other marginalized group actually. They have higher rates of depression, suicide, and substance abuse, and eating disorders, homelessness. And the best mitigating factor to bring those risks back to typical teen levels or middle levels is their parents' acceptance. So the fact that you have had a ministry at this congregation that focuses on PFLAG, which is support for the parents, is you have been ministering in the most profound way to the local young LGBTQ folks. So those are some behaviors that you and the church have done that have made an actual impact. I guess the performative piece, I will say as a queer person, I don't mind the performative allyship. I don't mind it. I don't mind a statement during Pride, like happy Pride, like I hope you guys are having a good month. I don't mind something that may feel performative on social media. Not that you have to do that, but it does. Maybe because of my age, I'm old enough to really know what it feels like to be, to have that whisper silence that we talked about. That straight people aren't going to acknowledge gay people at all. I know what that feels like. So to me, I'm like, any little performative thing, I'm like, oh, that person's nice. That person doesn't hate me. That person doesn't take me out back and punch me. You know, I think younger LGBTQ folks are a little bit more sensitive to performative. They're sensitive to that more than I think we are. To me, it actually means a lot if somebody makes a statement.
It's affirming.
It's affirming.
I've heard both, so
Yeah.
it leaves you kind of like, I don't know what to do.
One way or the other, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there can be something really helpful about that, about taking a stance for being supportive online, even if it doesn't feel like it's directly impacting. It can signal welcome. And it can signal that you are not gonna be the person who's like, your girlfriend, what? Just that sort of just cultural, like gross. It can signal that you are, oh, you have a girlfriend? Oh, where do you meet? Was it because you wore green on Thursdays? Okay. Does anybody want to make a last comment? We're gonna break so we can get to worship.
Well, just one other reminder, we do some of the walks, the pride walks.
That's how Mary and I did that a couple times.
Yes, that's how we met.
Yeah, and Mary has joined the P-Flag in some parade walks. Yeah. So that could be considered performative. What are you doing? Are you helping feed anybody? No, you're walking in a parade, but you are showing numbers. You're saying, I live in Manhattan Beach and I care about LGBTQ folks. That's what I don't know what your intent was, Mary, in being there, but that was the message that I believed by you showing up.
Well, and it was interesting because I think it was the Hermosa one that you were at, I think, the reaction, because there is so much hate and just, it's, as we all know, it's just out there. But as we walked through these areas and people were cheering, it was really, I thought it had to be reaffirming for the gay people who are afraid to go out and, these are serious times.
Right, if we're quiet about our support or silent or just feel it inside, then we run the risk of making the most marginalized amongst us worry. We run the risk of having fixed our banisters and there's no icy walkways, but we're not actually acting when there's been a wound. So I thank you guys for being part of the action that you've taken and choosing to be this kind of congregation means something to the community.
And I think we need to continue to do that because of what's going on around us.
Yes.
And because of the targeting, and from what I understand, the trans community is the most targeted right now. And a lot of them are living in danger.
Right.
Yes.
And Hispanics.
Yeah.
And Hispanics.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that reflects, your question comes from a place of you wanting to be more than a message. You're wanting to actually support folks who need it the most. And I appreciate you guys being the kind of community that's going to reflect on that, whether it's about the Latino community, whether it's about the trans community. What are some of the actions that this community might need from us? Okay. Thanks so much for having me. I'm gonna join you all for worship. I might have to skedaddle because I have another event this afternoon. I'm actually singing in a chorus this afternoon, a rendition of Take Me to Church by Hosier, which he's an Irish songwriter who wrote that song to confront the Catholic Church stance on homosexuality. So I'm doing gay church stuff today, guys. That's what I'm doing. So if you see me skedaddle from worship, that's where I'm going. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.